She stood on my porch with an old blue suitcase in one hand and tears streaming down her face. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "I didn't know where else to go. I need your help." The porch light flickered between us, and for a moment I couldn't even recognize the woman standing there. 10 years had changed both of us, but I knew those eyes. They belonged to Emily Carter, the girl who had once saved me when I had absolutely nothing. I had spent years wondering if I would ever see her again. I just never imagined she would return looking like someone whose entire world had fallen apart. I opened the door without asking another question. She stepped inside quietly, setting the worn suitcase near the hallway wall as though she wasn't sure she deserved to stay. She apologized before I even offered her a seat, something that broke my heart because the Emily I remembered had always been confident and full of life. I handed her a blanket and made 2 cups of coffee while she stared silently through the kitchen window into the rainy Seattle evening. Years earlier, when I had first arrived in the city after losing both my parents in a car accident, I had been sleeping in my truck and working construction during the day. I barely had enough money to eat. Emily worked at the neighborhood diner. Every morning she quietly slipped me an extra sandwich and never accepted payment. She told me everyone deserves kindness before they deserve judgment. Those simple words carried me through some of the darkest days of my life. Eventually I found steady work, started my own home renovation business, and little by little life became good again. Emily disappeared after moving to another state with the man she loved. We lost touch, but I never forgot what she had done for me. Now she sat at my kitchen table looking exhausted, older than her 35 years. She finally broke the silence. Her husband had passed away 8 months earlier after a sudden heart attack. Medical bills had consumed nearly all of their savings. Then the bank foreclosed on the house. Friends who had promised to help slowly disappeared. Even some family members stopped answering her calls after she asked for temporary assistance. She had driven nearly 12 hours because my name was the only one she could still remember when life had once seemed impossible. I almost turned around 3 times, she admitted. I kept thinking maybe you wouldn't remember me. I smiled through tears. I've remembered every sandwich you ever gave me. She lowered her head and cried harder than before. That night I made up the guest room. She apologized at least 10 more times before going to sleep. The next morning I noticed she woke before sunrise and started cleaning my kitchen without being asked. She folded laundry, washed dishes, and even watered the flowers outside. "You don't have to earn your place here," I told her gently. She looked embarrassed. "I've spent months feeling like a burden." "No," I replied. "You've spent months carrying too much by yourself." Over the following weeks I learned just how deeply grief had changed her. She barely smiled. Loud noises startled her. She constantly worried about spending money, even refusing to let me buy her new shoes after noticing holes in the ones she wore. Instead of handing her money, I offered her something better. I asked if she would help manage the office side of my growing business. She hesitated. "I've been out of work for years. I don't need perfection," I said. "I need someone I trust." Little by little she began organizing invoices, scheduling appointments, answering customer calls, and bringing order to the chaos I had ignored for years. Within 2 months our business became more organized than it had ever been. Customers loved talking to her. Employees respected her. Most importantly, she slowly started believing in herself again. One afternoon we finished renovating the home of an elderly veteran named Mr. Johnson. When he admitted he couldn't afford the final payment because of unexpected medical expenses, I quietly told him not to worry about it. Emily looked surprised but didn't question me until we got back into the truck. "That was thousands of dollars." "I know. You needed that payment." He needed peace more. She smiled for the first time since arriving. "You haven't changed." I laughed. I learned that from someone who used to sneak sandwiches to broke construction workers. She looked out the window so I wouldn't see the tears forming again. Months passed. The holidays arrived. Instead of decorating alone like I usually did, Emily filled the house with Christmas music, homemade cookies, and simple decorations bought from thrift stores. She somehow made everything feel warm without spending much money. One snowy afternoon she convinced me to deliver meals to a local shelter. As we served dinner, I noticed her kneeling beside a little girl coloring alone in the corner. The child hadn't spoken to anyone all evening. Emily simply sat beside her and started coloring another page without saying a word. After several minutes the little girl smiled. Watching that moment reminded me why kindness doesn't always require speeches. Sometimes it only requires presence. On the drive home Emily confessed something she had never told anyone. After her husband died, she had seriously considered giving up. Not because she wanted to die. Because she no longer believed anyone needed her. I felt invisible, she whispered. I pulled the truck onto a quiet overlook above the city. Then I handed her my phone. It was the business email. Dozens of customers had written messages over the previous months praising her patience, kindness, and encouragement. One elderly widow wrote that Emily's cheerful voice had been the first reason she smiled after losing her own husband. Another customer said Emily stayed on the phone for nearly an hour helping him understand paperwork after he suffered a stroke. One family wrote that she had restored their faith in good people. Emily covered her mouth as tears rolled down her face. I didn't know. Because kindness rarely gets applause while it's happening. She cried quietly. But it changes lives anyway. Spring arrived with new opportunities. Our business expanded enough that we hired 2 additional employees. I officially made Emily a partner instead of simply an office manager. She refused at first. I don't deserve half of this. I shook my head. You helped build it. Then I handed her another envelope. Inside was the deed to a small cottage a few miles away. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't expensive. But it was hers. She stared silently for several seconds before looking up. You bought me a house? No. I don't understand. I paid the down payment. She looked confused. The rest? You've already earned it through your share of the business. She burst into tears all over again. No one has ever believed in me this much. I smiled. You believed in me first. A few weeks later she moved into the cottage. The old blue suitcase that had once carried everything she owned now sat empty inside her bedroom closet. She refused to throw it away. It's a reminder, she said. Of what? That the worst night of my life became the first day of my new one. Nearly a year after she arrived, someone knocked on my office door. It was a young man in worn-out clothes carrying a backpack instead of a suitcase. He had recently lost his apartment and was looking for work. Before I could answer, Emily stepped forward. She offered him a bottle of water, a sandwich, and an interview. I watched quietly as history repeated itself. After he left, I smiled. You already knew you were going to hire him, didn't you? She laughed softly. He reminded me of someone. Me? No. She grinned. He reminded me of the person who once opened a door without asking questions. Life has a strange way of bringing kindness full circle. Sometimes we're the one standing behind the door with enough strength to help someone else. Other times we're the one standing outside with tears in our eyes, hoping someone will simply let us in. Neither position lasts forever. What lasts forever is the compassion we choose to give when we have the chance. Because money can disappear. Homes can be lost. Careers can fall apart. But one act of genuine kindness can become the bridge that carries another human being from hopelessness to healing. Every time I drive past Emily's little cottage, I see flowers blooming across the front porch where that old blue suitcase once rested beside my door. And every single time, I'm reminded that the greatest gift we can ever offer another person isn't wealth or success. It's opening the door when someone has nowhere else to go.